LTX Video is the latest rave on text or image to video, but can you run it locally on, say, an 8GB card? And the answer to that is simply yes, and I'm going to show you how. So on the screen, you see an example of image to video using LTX. And I'll go over the workflow in a minute or two, but I do want to share with you 3 models that you can use if you have an 8GB card, maybe 6GB. Now, when you link to the Hugging Face page here, you'll see some examples and some prompt examples that you can use to test it out first. So say I click over here, it's going to give you the prompt that you can basically copy and paste and adjust according to the video that you want to do. But for the model, you want to head over to Files and Versions, scroll down, and you'll find the original 2B model here at 9GB. Okay. Now in Comfyui, because of the RAM swapping, I can run the 9GB model on my system no problem. However, if you're a little strapped on RAM, there's an FP8 and a BF16 version, courtesy of Symphone here. The FP8 version is only 2.34GB. The BF16 one is 4.69. Now with the BF16, I notice very little quality degradation, and even the FP8 can hold its own. But at certain sizes, like at 768 by 512, you do kind of see that quality degradation, but give it a try and see if it works for you. The models you can put in your checkpoints folder. In my case, it's under the main Comfyui folder, models, checkpoints. And you'll also need T5 text encoders, same ones that you use for Flux or SD 3.5. There's a PixArt version that you can use, but that file is like 9GB, so it's really up to you what you want to use. The other thing you'll need are specific nodes, so go into your manager at the top, and in Custom Nodes Manager, you want to type in Video Help, and this one here, Comfyui Video Helper Suite. Go ahead and install that, shut down Comfyui, and restart. And as I always say, make sure you're on the latest version of Comfyui, so do an update while you're at it. And if you're familiar with text-to-image workflows, there's really not that much difference with this workflow. We have a clip loader here, which I'm using the FP8 version. We have our load checkpoint node here. We have our positive and negative prompt nodes. And then from the Video Helper Suite, we have this one called LTX V Conditioning. Leave it at its default setting. And we have 2 inputs, positive and negative, on both sides. You want to connect it to your positive and negative prompts and also to the sampler, so they connect that way. The checkpoint loader is going to connect to the sampler with model, and then VAE is going to connect to VAE decode as it normally does. This is our empty latent node, and it works the same way. This is where we can put our dimensions, the quantity, and length, which I'll get into later. Leave it at 97 at its default, and it simply connects to latent image on the sampler. Just below that is a sampler node that connects up here, and then our scheduler will input the steps. These you don't have to touch, only the steps is what matters on this node. And then we take the Sigma input and input it into the sampler. Then from the sampler, we go output to samples, and then VAE, we already saw that it connects to the checkpoint. And by default, the workflow is set up to save as an animated WebP. But one of the other nodes with Video Helper is this one called Video Combine. This allows us to save it to an MP4 format, which I have here. And we'll go over the settings right now. Now, the first thing I want to point out is that you need pretty verbose prompts. Otherwise, it's not going to look that great. I've found so far, though, that you're going to be generating quite a few to get good results. But the first setting I want to go over is the size and length here. Default is 768 by 512. A length of 97 is going to get you about 4 seconds. You could increase this higher to, like, I think it's 1206 or 1214. We'll look in a second, by 704. The downside of that is, yes, you get higher resolution, but you're only going to get like 1 second of video. For the sampler, Euler seems to do well. Down here for steps, when you're doing text to image, when you're experimenting, just use like 30. But when you get a decent result and you use the same seed, crank it back up to 50, even as high as 100. That's all you have to change on the scheduler. And then the recommended CFG is between 3 to 7. I've been using 5, seems to yield pretty decent results. For the frame rate, keep it at 24. That's how cinematic movies are made. Loop count, it just means if you want to loop it. You could rename your file here. And here's the format. There are several versions. You can do GIF, ProRes, which kind of defeats the purpose at this resolution. But this is pretty much standard H.264 MP4, even 265 MP4. This is supposed to improve quality, so if you go to 420p 10LE, but it may not work on certain systems. It doesn't work on mine. CRF, you want to keep under 20 for the best quality, but you don't want to go too low as well. I find being the lowest at the most will give you the best quality. But basically, the higher you go, like let's say you go 30, 40, it's going to be more compressed, but you're going to lose quality. Leave save metadata on true. And this is good for if you have a video where you like the workflow and you want to work from that, just slide the video back into the workspace and it's going to pick up the settings, the prompt, and everything that you used. Ping pong, I believe it plays it back in reverse to create a loop. I'm not sure how useful that is. I haven't actually tried it. And then save output, leave it on true because you want it to export to your file location. Okay, here's an example of text to video, and I just took the prompt from their website and tried it out here. This one was done at 100 steps, and really, I don't see any difference between 50 to 100 steps in this particular example. It looks pretty decent. There is a little bit of ghosting. The details aren't very clear. You do see some deformities, but I would say initially for text to video, don't have high expectations. There's only so much you can do with it. But here's the same prompt using image to video, which I find more effective. Now, what's going to happen with some image to video, you're going to find that sometimes the motion just doesn't happen. So what I did with the image to video workflow is added an extra step in the beginning, and I'm just going to go over it quickly here. And I found out about this from a Reddit post, and basically what you need to do is create some noise or compression so that during generation time, it can pick up that noise and create something from it. The problem is with a freshly output image, it's too clean. There's no noise, there's no compression. So what this does, it creates that noise for you. So you simply have a load image node here. We have a resize image node. This is only there to complete the workflow, but I would put in the original width and height that you were using. Unless you have a smaller image for whatever reason, just connect image to image. In this case, I used 1280 by 768. And then the next node is the same one we used, video combined, to do the output. We use similar settings, except this is what's going to help. CRF. Remember we talked about how under 20 will give you good quality, but if you use between 30 to 40, it's going to compress it even more and basically create noise, right? So set that between 30 to 40. We have a select file name node, and this is needed just to connect this to this, and then output into our load video path. We connect file name to video. You don't have to do anything here. And then we connect the image node to an LTX video image to video node. Everything else is pretty much the same, but that should help with your image to video if you're finding that your generations are just static. Now, when it comes to image to video, 30 to 50 steps is more than enough because you're using an image. Now, in terms of prompting, they also provide a system prompt that you can use with ChatGPT, Claude, or if you're running an LLM locally. And as you can see here, this is the main prompt, and it gives you all the specifications that you need to identify in the prompt here, like a description of the scene focusing on key actions, include detailed movements of characters, camera angles, lighting, so on and so forth. And even if you wanted to, there are some prompt examples here that you could feed ChatGPT. So I simply fed that into ChatGPT here with the prompt examples, and then it'll respond. I can assist with enhancing AI video prompts, yada, yada, yada. And then I can just input what I want. So in this case, I put a futuristic concept car with a body kit speeding down a mountain road at sunset. And then it popped out this nice verbose prompt that I can use. use. Now you might have to tweak it a bit. I find that if you put camera motions in the beginning, it tends to help with the motion. But if there are certain details that you want to change in the prompt, you have the copy here. And then you can feed it something else, a woman riding a motorcycle at night. It'll spit out another prompt for you. I also want to point out on their playground here, if you don't have the system specs to run it, you can run it here on the Hugging Face page. Depending on how busy their server is, you can do text to video, image to video, really up to you. The thing I wanted to share here are these resolution presets. And this is sort of a guide that you can use in terms of your setting. What we're using as default is 768 by 512, 97 frames. That's going to get you about 4 seconds of video. Not the highest resolution, but hey, it's quick, it's fast, and it runs. If you change this to its highest setting, 1216 by 704, 41 frames, you're only going to get like 1 or 2 seconds, but higher resolution. And then you can get 10 seconds with 513 at 320, 257 frames. That's going to equal to about 10 seconds. So I would use this as a guide for these specific sizes. Just remember, the higher you go, those seconds start to decrease. Okay, here are some examples that I created using their prompts. I converted this one, and basically I generated an image using a similar prompt and use image to video instead. It looks pretty decent, but if you look closely, especially at the mouth, the teeth are kind of weird, but the movement interaction looks very natural. As always, landscape videos tend to do really well with these models. The quality is not the greatest, but you could try upscaling it. Earlier, I showed you a concept car prompt, and this was the result of that. I really like the way the motion looks. It's just, again, the overall quality is just not there yet. There's still quite a bit of deformities in the wheels. There's a lot of wobble as well that happens. Here's one of a sailboat in the water. I like the slow motion. Even the lightning movement in the background looks pretty cool. The guy looks a little deformed, but hey. Simple zoom in shot of a woman on a motorcycle. It seems to do well with people, but I just find the quality throughout doesn't hold up. The first 2 seconds are good, and then it starts to fall off. And by the way, the times I'm getting for 768 at 512, 30 steps takes about 50 to 55 seconds, 50 steps, 1 minute and 35, 100 steps, 3 minutes and 10 seconds, give or take. At the highest resolution at 1216 at 704, I think it was, it took roughly about 3 minutes, and that's again only 1 or 2 seconds of video. Now, if I'm being honest, just set your expectations low. Don't get me wrong, this is all great that such a small model can run locally on an 8GB card. That's very promising, but don't expect quality from like Kling, Haluo, Runway. This compares to like SD 1.5 when it just came out for text to image. So I'm excited to see the progression on LTX Video. As always, my friends, let me know in the comments below what has been your experiences. And in a future video to come, I want to cover Flux Continuum. This is a front-end workflow that I happen to come across on YouTube that I think you'll all find useful. But until that next video, my friends, I'll see you when I see you.